Hey everyone, this is Daddy Lazadik, and today we're going to take a look at graphics in the OpenToonz program. The program offers four distinct categories of graphics, but when you look at it more closely, there are really only two main ones, because several of them are essentially just slightly modified variations of the others. So, what exactly are the types of graphics in OpenToonz? These are the two main types of graphics, as I mentioned before. These are raster graphics and vector graphics. How are they different from each other? It is mainly in terms of quality and the specific way that they interact with lines and objects. What do I mean by that? Look, whenever we start drawing something in OpenToonz, a brand new layer is automatically created. And this layer is a raster graphic layer. If you take a quick look at your timeline or your X sheet, you'll be able to see it right there. Here. There are several layers and different types of graphics you can create. Toonz graphics, meaning cartoon graphics, are the green sheets where we draw. Next, we have regular raster graphics. Let's create one. Let's just draw a line, for example. Now, let's go ahead and create a vector graphic and also sketch out a simple line using that exact same method. Now let's zoom in on them and take a look. Starting with our very first line here, that's our raster graphic, and when we zoom in closely, we see this specific kind of pixelated grid pattern. These rough and jagged stair-step edges are exactly what we see. So how exactly is this particular type of graphic drawn on the screen? If we press and place a small physical dot on our canvas, on our sheet of paper, the information is recorded in that specific area, and after that, it cannot be altered or modified in any way. This information is static, and there's nothing else we can do with it except delete it completely. But if we draw in Rasterwave, using very simple graphic elements, everything functions in exactly the same way, so there are virtually no noticeable differences here. But if we draw in vector graphics, when we zoom in, we won't see that jagged edge. Even if we zoom in to the maximum, 14,000%, we won't see a single pixelated edge here. Why does this happen? It's all because this line is calculated mathematically. And when we zoom in with our camera, the formula is constantly recalculated mathematically. That's how it works. So there are no sharp edges. Now let's remove the vector graphics and the simple raster graphics and leave only the Toonz graphics. How can we work with this type of graphics? Basically, this is our main working graphic, the one we use to draw our pieces, make sketches, and rough drafts. And it's very lightweight and doesn't require a lot of resources from your personal computer. How can we interact with it? We have the ability to draw whatever we imagine, we can carefully choose the exact color of our line from the palette, and we can even fill these various objects with any vibrant color we want to use for our design. And if we need to, we can move them using the animation tool, which we'll talk about later. We can also split these objects into parts. For example, a line, I can select the object and tear off a part of it. Or I can rotate this object back into place. Now I can select it again, set a rotation point, a pivot point, and rotate or distort it somehow. From this ball, for example, we can tear off a piece and move it somewhere else. These are the fundamental core functions that we typically utilize in raster software graphics. In vector graphics, things are a little different. Let's turn off this graphic and turn on the vector graphic. Look, vector graphics, since it's a precise mathematical calculation, it can be easily modified and adjusted in almost any way you can imagine. Any way you want. Now I've selected the animation tool, and I can also move, compress, stretch, rotate, and so on. If I choose the selection tool and click on our object, it'll select the whole thing. So here, it's not like I select this object and then want to transform just the top part. If I try to select just that part, it'll still select the entire object no matter what. So for the computer, this line is a single whole object, an individual object. How can we interact with it? We can also change its color if we want to. Let's set it back to black for now. But in Vector, there are some unique features. Look, if we now carefully take the tool, that lets us transform control points. It's this one right here. The little corner with a ruler, if we use that, you'll see. These are the control points that we can manipulate and reposition or rotate as needed by utilizing Bezier curves. These little handles coming out from our last point are called Bezier curves. And we can transform them however we want. For example, I can turn this line into a heart shape. Okay, I just need to zoom in now. We can make a heart out of this material right here. All right, let's go ahead and select this specific option right here to move forward. Let's move it over here. Let's move it over here. And from a simple line, we've made a simple heart. If we need to, we can easily fill it in. Let's add some color. We remove the fill tool and color it in. But when filling in an object, you need to be very careful. Why is that? Well, it is because if you accidentally happen to break the line, the paint will quickly leak out through the gap, spread all over the entire screen, and then just disappear. However, if we carefully close it up again, we can then fill it back up without any further problems at all. Also, in vector graphic transformation, we have what are called pinches. If we ever need to maneuver, pull, or push something somewhere, bend a curved arc, or on the contrary, completely straighten it back out again, you can utilize this specific tool to do exactly that. The pump tool lets you add or remove line thickness. On one hand, we can add to the lines, and on the other, we can reduce them. On the contrary, we can make them thinner, which will add more dynamism to our line work and make it livelier, especially when it comes to creating characters. Next, we have the magnet tool, which allows us to manipulate and distort the graphics in some specific way, or, on the contrary, precisely lock them into their final positions as they transform. There are specialized chips or pliers that let you bend it in some way, but they are actually rarely ever utilized in most standard workflows. There's an iron tool that lets us smooth out any irregularities. There's a knife that allows us to make cuts and remove certain parts we don't need. So that's what is directly related to vector graphics, and more specifically to lines. Where and how? All of this is used in vector and raster graphics. Vector graphics are mainly used for drawing complex characters, especially their detailed faces, because we can create a character once, set up what is known as a professional character rig, and then use it without any issues while transforming it however we want for the animation. Moreover, if we zoom in with our camera, the quality of our character won't be lost. Vector-based graphics are frequently utilized for creating detailed backgrounds, and in the vast majority of cases, they are used to make initial sketches. Or they're used for simple 2D animation, like in traditional animation. Basic and straightforward raster graphics, which we create on these blue sheets, are primarily utilized as a basic canvas for initial rough sketches and for creating detailed backgrounds. That's about it. Next, we'll take a closer look at specific brush settings and how to effectively use these brush settings for various different types of graphics. Thank you all, and goodbye.